Okay, welcome everyone. I hope I will be heard very well. One of the QA leads in Customer Times, already in IT industry already for 15 years and almost 4 years with Customer Times and working with Salesforce project. And my presentations about how to test Salesforce project, but I know you already tried, and I would like to make some interactive at the middle and closer to the end of the presentation. So be ready and take attention about what I'm gonna say. Before we even start testing any Salesforce project, or even not actually related to Salesforce project, but before testing any project in general, and especially for Salesforce project, we need to know about our clients, its industry. We have to know, get knowledge about the project. So the main topic over here is know your customer. Without that general knowledge, at least, if you will be assigned to one of the projects related to, for example, pharmacy industry, we not familiar with pharmacy industry. We even don't know any concepts or any terminology apart of that. For example, we have an allergy. Okay, we know that, some sort of allergy, what is about, but if we're gonna speak about more complex diseases, we don't gonna know. At least it's a good way to know about this a little bit, not in detail, not how to treat it, but you will know what your customer is talking about. You will be on the same page, on the same language. And you have to know its standard values, what they expect from you, what the results, especially when you listen our previous presentation, it's about the culture. And different cultures have different results. They're expecting from you different things. Of course, it's obvious to say that they expect work in software, but they also expect different commitment for that, different deliverables that they expect. Of course, you will set that during your client meetings and so on, but that's a key point. Know your customer. Of course, know your project that you're gonna be working with. It's very essential and common knowledge. Without knowledge about how the things work, what this is project about, you can't do stuff on that project. You can't do QA activities. You can't do development before you will at least generally know what this is project about. Know the timelines, because as you well known, you will be always lack of time. No matter what methodology of development you used, you will be always lack of time. Maybe sometimes you will be lucky and you will be on time, and it's because of the good management. But in major cases, or in a startup environment where software rapidly developed, even sometimes without any requirements, and you just prototyping it, showcasing it to your client. And in that case, you have to know the goals and objective of the project. For example, if you do some software, you have, or application, you have to know why you're doing it, why the client comes to you and ask for the development of that solution for them. Of course, in general, you have to know the team that you're working with, the team from the client side, because in Salesforce, I never seen a project that you have one stakeholder, one developer, and so on. We're going on live and developing some solution. You always have some multiple key stakeholders, multiple representatives from your client, huge teams, because Salesforce mainly focused on enterprise level solutions. And in your side, when you have a client which is asking for a solution, you have a big team on your side. You have developers, you have architects, consultants, BAs, QAs, and you have to establish a well communication. Especially if you're a QA, you are responsible for the end solution as well. And in case you have bugs or some problems, the first team that the client comes in, it will be a QA. They will ask you, guys, how did you test it? Why that happens? And only after that, you will go to the developer. Hey guys, why we have that defect slippage, and so on, so on. That's a normal process. So speaking about QAs and what will be useful from a general QA knowledge for the Salesforce project, especially. Of course, that would be very handy to know a general testing knowledge. You may get certified with different providers, and you have to know the testing basics and different approaches. But more specifically, knowledge of impact analysis it will help you very, very well, because in that case, when the client rapidly asks for the new features, you at least could predict what will be impactful and where you should focus your testing activities on which one, because in that case you won't be able to rely only to automation which is run continuously. Sometimes it will take time to get this thing automated, and in most cases for the prototyping you won't gonna get the automated solution. You just rapidly develop it, smoke tested it, showing to the you will gonna show it to the client, and they decide if it's good, or you need to do some step backs and rework your solution and so on in continuous environment. So for the time management, you have to know the goals, plan of the project, and to help you with that, project management tools will be handy, such as Jira. For the test management, it's commonly used TestRail and other tools. There is a lot of on the market. You may use for the project management tools Monday.com or ClickUp or something else. It's very depend. It's actually not actually depend on which tool you're gonna use. You just know how to use it, and you will be very comfortable with any tool with some small amount of time when you dedicate that to know that tool. And for the communications, that actually, as you know from the previous presentation, it's very crucial, and it's also crucial when you go into the QA activities. You might just follow test scenarios, just run out to test, and okay, there is a bug, that's it. Maybe post it in a Jira or something else, and that's it. No, you may communicate the source of the bug. Maybe do the analysis, of course, if you have time and capabilities and skills. Maybe point the actual pieces or components in the software, in the solution, that might break, possible cause that bug, and you will dramatically reduce the time for debugging. And don't forget to do the breaks, because sometimes you work hours and hours, weeks and weeks with the Scrum teams, with any development team, and you might get to the point that you just getting to the point that there is a lot of defect slipperage, and you just not know why that happens, and it might be because you just tired, or maybe you have to look at the solution or your approaches in a different way. And well set it up development process will help you to tailor QA activities to that process as well. I will be a bit shorter, just to not speaking about development process, because we already discussed with DevOps and CI/CD tools as well. And I would like to mention the bug handling process. I already said that you may just discover a bug and just, hey, it's just a bug. There is something that's not that we expect and what we actually have, and report it to your project management tool. And in that case, you have to well-established process how you fixing that bugs, in which environment, where, and maybe this bug related not actually to the solution, it may be some requirements gap, which is costly to fix it because you already developed some, you invest some time, and there is a gap in the requirements, and you have to rework entire solution just to fix it. It happens, it just you have to be familiar and know how to handle that situation. No, it's not a critical, it's just a regular job. And at last we get to the point, so how to start testing on the Salesforce project, maybe because if it's a new, for example, the fresh new project, you have to set up frameworks and tools such as Apex Unit, TestRail, Workbench, Selenium, Tosca, Salesforce Client, Inspector, Salesforce Organizer, Keeper, each of that tool will help you do the testing activities as well as the data loader. But it's not limited to that list. That list could be endless. There is a lot of automation solution. There is a lot of project management tool, and so on, so on. So depends on the project, budget, and the client, and the team composition, and the ability to use these tools. You will decide what is the best for your project. Deliverables for the client. In terms of testing, most of the clients expect, okay, just bring me working software. Pretty simple, eh? But in real world, enterprise clients require some specific deliverables, such as test case, documentation, entire documentation. They are very dedicated about the testing process, about the progress, especially if it's a long-term project which is developing through the month of work, and there is an extended period of time, and they would like to track the results of testing. Of course, as they would like to track the result of development in general, but especially when it's come to the testing, they expect that after the development they already have a working solution, but it's right now under test. There might be bugs, and it might be blocked or require a huge amount of time for rework and fix those bugs. So you have to establish how to communicate that process to your client. It's very helpful. So getting deeper, when you start actual testing of the Salesforce project, of course you may follow up script, do the automation, but in case you need to debug and you have time for that, maybe you would like to help your consultants team and developers team to debug. In that example, you will try to debug the flow, and you're probably gonna help one of the consultants to identify the place where something gets wrong. But in case you have some Apex classes inside that flow, you also, if the class breaks and you discovered issue that in that class, it will help to developer to find that class and maybe dug deeper to find what's gonna go wrong. And of course, while we're testing our development, Salesforce itself has their own releases 3 times a year. Anyone who works with the Salesforce know that. And those releases actually could heavily affect to your system, and you just didn't put that in a timeline or didn't do correct impact analysis, that next upcoming Salesforce release will just break your system. And to check that, you have to well know about what's going to happen with that release and prepare the activities upfront before that release, and do the testing in sandboxes, of course, and push that to the production. And keep in mind that Salesforce won't gonna wait for you to complete the testing. They have a strict deadline when the all production org will be updated with their release, and you can delay it or something in that nature. Of course, when we testing our products, our Salesforce solution, we have a lot of problems with access. There is a numerous amount of tools inside the Salesforce platform that will bring the access or can cause the problem with the access, whether it's access to the records, access to the Apex classes, and so on. And I especially bring that on the screen because a lot of issues and bugs comes from that nature. And speaking of the UAT session, on the previous presentation, it was already mentioned that if you have a trunk-based development, you have all the sandboxes in that trunk ready to demonstrate, and you have to involve stakeholders to do the testing from this side. You have to invite and use client capabilities and client knowledge and ask them to try or maybe do some testing activities in those sandboxes as well, because the client definitely knows what they want. If you didn't involve that and don't do the UAT sessions, you can develop solution, and maybe if UAT happens quarterly, you will face that after the entire quarter of the development, you bring the solution in place that's not fulfilling actually client needs. Of course, the Scrum ceremonies and so on will cover that, but in the best way is to cover it with the UAT sessions and the demos as well. When we speaking about testing, Salesforce have a lot of sandboxes. I never seen the project that have one single full test sandbox and just moving things to production. Many projects, especially enterprise one, have a lot of branches and sandboxes, dev sandboxes, where the single developer may be a team working with, and they push to another environment and upper, and eventually they go to the full sandbox and they are ready to go to the production. So the testing activities should be well established with those sandboxes, because when you set it up, sometimes you require some manual steps, or maybe you didn't have a well established DevOps process, and you just need to do a lot of manual steps. For example, for prototyping, maybe your project didn't have money to invest in DevOps right away. They just need a prototype to just play with and maybe do a decision if they gonna develop in that area further. And for that piece of tips and tricks, I would like to, in terms, when we're speaking about QA, here is a few ones. Blogs, Salesforce groups, and social media will help you develop your skills and general knowledge about Salesforce itself, or maybe the specific scenarios and implementation of the platform. Salesforce and Salesforce event and QA events related to testing also would be handy to know about more about testing and Salesforce project as well. Of course, you could get certified with Salesforce. It's well known. There is a numerous certification from Salesforce, but you could get certified from the testing perspective as well, for example, from ISTQB. And that's the key point over here. You have to always keep learning. Don't forget, for example, about trailheads. Everyone who works with the Salesforce environment knows what it is. My great tip list for the QAs. When it comes to the testing, we have a lot of settings in Salesforce environment related to what users can do, what users can see, profiles, roles, territories, and so on. But when it comes to don't do testing by default. Everyone, especially developers and consultants, testing user. Okay, I'm adding some new fields, develop the flow. Okay, I'll try if that flow works. But they, by default, they use that as an admins, and when it goes to the end users, they forgot to set up some settings. Maybe provide access to the Apex class, provide field visibility, or just simply forget to put the field on the layout. It's very frequently problem that could happen. This should be prepared to validate the reports functionality. Reports in Salesforce is a general tool to provide some data, and later on it could be used in dashboard, or in case big projects you may see these data in a much better solution, for example Tableau. And you also have to check that, because you could develop some flows, and after that the data comes through that flows, but it could affect reports, and you need to check what the business users gets from that reports. There is a lot of tips in that list, but I believe you already checked that. In case you will want some more information, you can ask me a question, but I would like to have a bit more time for our latest part of the presentation. Common Salesforce bugs. Configuration errors. It happens pretty frequently. Data issues as well. Security access, as already mentioned, it's also a very, very frequent situation when you get bugs. Integration issues. Salesforce could be integrated in a many system, as well the other external system could have an integration with Salesforce. And common bugs I could map here, just a mapping field, just to highlight. From that the team from, for example, from India or other countries just forget to map specific fields while they push the records to your Salesforce organization, and just forget about the maybe one single sign in the API name of the field, and it causes the problem. And if you have one field, it's pretty simple to discover it. If you have 10,000 or thousands of fields, a lot of functionality that you're pushing through the integration, it could be a problem to discover it. And especially if that developed not by a team, and you don't have a direct communication with that team which is responsible for the integration. You have to put efforts to communicate with them through some middle teams that could connect with them. Performance, of course, the well-known issues with the Salesforce, it's a CPU time limit. When you have a lot of loops in your flow, you might be facing with CPU time limits, which is actually limited by 10 seconds. And now you will see some very, very common bugs. I believe I faced with them on the weekly basis. This one related that we're trying to find an object or some pieces of the code that not exist anymore, or maybe it was removed. Another great example, just the flow just dropped. You don't know the reason, but you could use debug, flow debug, to discover more details about that. So when you also doing UAT sessions, so you perform the demo session as well during your Scrum ceremonies. In most teams, the QA or BA team providing and doing the demos. And if you like to do the demo, you have to be very committed about gathering feedback during the demo, because it's really important. It is one of the key checkpoints with the client to discover if you swimming on the right lane. You are connected to the client and you're working on a solution that exactly what they want. If you're showing up or demonstrate some data, it is very commonly that you might be used to search this data through the reports, because most of the business users understand that, and when the data represented in the report, it's much better than you use some queries or any other ways. So as a quick conclusion before our interactivity, Salesforce testing, of course, it's complex, and you have a lot of different settings that you have to check in. You have to understand the business needs, purposes, and what the clients are wishing from your solution. It's not enough just checking acceptance criteria through the requirements, because you have to do a lot of additional checks, some negative case scenarios, and so on. And skipping the UAT, it could cause big problems for your deliverables, or postponing it because the client could start to worry about are we on track, and you have to dive in a lot of conversation about that. Are we on track? Are we good? What problems and what caused the delay of the UAT session, and so on, so on. And of course, don't forget learning, use trailheads, use Salesforce certification, and so on, so on. And speaking of the interactivity, we're closing to the end of the presentation. I mentioned that everyone gets the ball when you come to that. So if I ask you, for example, just test it, what you gonna do? Do you have a ball?
Squeeze.
Okay, squeeze it.
Drop it.
Okay, drop it. Something else.
Measure it.
Measure it. Okay, that's the ball. Why are we doing that? Remember what I said. Know business of your client. What the business of the ball? What the purpose of it?
Being squeezed.
Being squeezed. More. Okay, that's better. And actually, it's a stress ball. So the purpose of it to release stress by squeezing. So we have to know about that. So we shouldn't do the testing related, for example, eating it, sniffing it, throwing it to the people, but it could be checked because sometimes it's released some stress. And that's one of the example. Without that knowledge, I could do huge amount of testing related to that ball. Throw it from the building, outside of the window, boil it, no matter what I'm gonna do, but it's not relevant. It's not improve the quality of that ball, and it's not improve the quality of the solution. Maybe when I squeeze it 100 times, it's break. It's more relevant testing than throwing up the ball. So that's the key point to think about before you start testing. Don't forget about the business needs of your client. The purpose of the testing, improve quality of the product and deliver the solution that fulfill the business need, basically the requirements and the acceptance criteria that provided in the business documentation. And basically, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. And it's the last presentation through our evening. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.